Breaking news. Russian plane disaster kills Ukrainian inmates. Zelensky cancels trip in response. Following this morning's plane disaster, which reportedly killed everyone on board, Ukrainian media reports that President Zelensky has cancelled his birthday plans, which included a regional travel and activities. The news site RBK did not provide any additional information beyond quoting a source in the president's office and regional administrations. Russian military jet crashes into Ukrainian border town, killing all on board, according to local governor. Kremlin claims dozens of victims were Ukrainian prisoners of war. Belgorod area governor Vyacheslav Gladkov reported that a military transport plane, believed to be an Il-76, went down some 40 miles outside of the administrative center. His statement was, "Everyone on board died." In English, the event involving the Russian Il-76 military transport remains uncommented by Zelensky at this time. The plane was reportedly transporting Ukrainian prisoners of war who were scheduled to participate in a swap, according to Russian officials. The Russian Defense Ministry has reportedly stated that the jet crashed at approximately 11 a.m. local time, 8 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, taking with it 65 Ukrainian prisoners of war, POWs, 6 crew members, and 3 other individuals. This information was previously cited by the Kremlin state news agency RIA. According to the RBK Ukraine news site, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has decided to postpone a regional trip and birthday festivities until the Russian plane disaster in the Belgorod region is fully investigated. RBK did not provide any additional information beyond quoting a source in the president's office or regional administrations. The event involving the Russian Il-76 military transport remains uncommented by Zelensky at this time. The plane was reportedly transporting Ukrainian prisoners of war who were scheduled to participate in a swap. According to Russian officials, one person was hurt and a fire was set on Wednesday at the Black Sea port of Odessa, Ukraine, according to regional governor Ola Kuiper. The attack was carried out using drones, according to Kuiper's post on the messaging service Telegram. The assault destroyed city homes. The magnitude of the damage was not elaborated upon. Following this, the governor announced that the air raid alert for the Odessa region had been lifted. According to Ukrainian officials, 2 people were killed, 8 were injured, and extensive damage was caused when a town near the front line in Ukraine was struck by a Russian missile strike in the middle of the afternoon, according to Vadim Filishkin, the governor of the Donetsk region, who spoke on Telegram. A house in Hernik was struck by the missile. Several structures were reduced to rubble in the pictures shared online. Residents were asked to escape to safer regions by Filishkin, who reported that apartment blocks and over 40 individual dwellings were damaged. An individual's remains were extricated from the debris by the Ukrainian Emergency Services. The northwest of Mariinka, a town that Ukraine still controls despite being nearly destroyed by Russian forces after months of fighting, is Hernik. The Independent has assembled a group of prominent journalists and analysts to discuss the ongoing violence in Ukraine on the occasion of the 2-year anniversary of the conflict's outbreak, the war that began 2 years ago between Russia and its European neighbor has devastated Ukraine and its people. During our panel discussion, we will reflect on the most important events of the last 2 years, predict what will happen next, and assess whether a settlement is in sight. The conversation, which is part of the Independent's virtual events series, will be hosted by Belle True, an award-winning chief international correspondent, photographer, and documentary filmmaker. Over the course of several journeys since the beginning of Russia's invasion, Belle has documented the catastrophic effects of the conflict on individuals across Ukraine. On Wednesday, a U.S. Senate committee passed a bill that would pave the way for American sovereignty over Russian assets to be transferred to Ukraine for use in reconstruction efforts following the nearly 2-year-long war's devastation. The historic Rebuilding Economic Prosperity and Opportunity (REPO) for Ukrainians Act was approved by the Senate Foreign Relations Committee by a vote of 20-1. Washington would be able to seize assets from a foreign central bank for the first time if this bill were to pass both houses of Congress and be signed into law by President Joe Biden. The U.S. is currently not at war with any of these countries. Within the next few minutes, Sergei Lavrov, Russia's foreign minister, will be holding a press conference at the UN. This follows reports that a military cargo plane went down in the Belgorod region of Russia. killing 9 people and 65 prisoners of war. Moscow has accused Ukraine of being responsible for the plane's downfall. Even if he doesn't take questions, the topic of the disaster will inevitably come up during his speech this afternoon, according to a former intelligence officer. Russian statements suggesting that 56 Ukrainian prisoners of war were on board a military plane that went down over Russian territory are most likely false. It is likely disinformation, stated Philip Ingram, a former intelligence officer in the British Army, told The Independent. To make a virtue out of this humiliating situation, the Russians will likely assert that Ukrainian captives were on board the downed plane. Russia appears to have lost control of the skies over a significant portion of Russia, in addition to the territories it occupies in Ukraine. Slovakia's Russia-friendly prime minister has made an astonishing U-turn on Ukraine, vowing support on his first trip to the war-torn country only days after challenging Ukrainian sovereignty. On Wednesday, in Uzhhorod, close to the Slovak border, Robert Fico met with Denis Shmyhal, his Ukrainian counterpart. Fico was elected in October after vowing to cut off his country's military help to Kyiv and reject additional sanctions against Russia. "We really want to assist you, we really want to help you," Mr. Fico said, adding that the political disagreements with Kyiv were political life and nothing more than minor. An official from the main Directorate of Intelligence in Kyiv announced that the planned prisoner swap between Russia and Ukraine has been cancelled. "The exchange is not taking place at the moment," Andriy Yusov told Radio Liberty, a Ukrainian news site. Following this morning's crash of a military transport jet in Belgorod, Russia asserted that 65 Ukrainian military men had perished. The Ukrainian government has asked the public to refrain from sharing the false information. The Russian parliament has approved a law that would make it possible to seize the assets of those who disseminate deliberately false information regarding the conflict. The second and third readings of the draft law must be adopted for it to take effect. After that, it will travel to the Federation Council, the lower house of parliament, and finally, the president's signature is required in order to censor anyone who disagree with Vladimir Putin. The Russian government frequently invokes the statute that prohibits discrediting the Russian military. The information being given is sketchy, according to Mark Voyager, a former special assistant for Russian issues to the U.S. Army Europe. He told Sky News that it is highly unlikely that any prisoners of war were on board. This follows claims made by the Kremlin that a Russian military plane carrying 65 Ukrainian prisoners of war crashed near the Ukrainian border. Ukrainian defense officials claimed they were still clarifying information regarding the crash because they lacked complete specifics. A senior army commander will announce on Wednesday morning that the future of the United Kingdom's military is uncertain because the undersized size of the armed forces. A war breaks out between the United States and Russia. General Sir Patrick Sanders will argue in a speech that the government must mobilize the nation to fight during a crisis in the British Army, which is at its smallest number in decades. He would suggest that private persons will have to be called up to fight in the armed services if war breaks out. 4 media agencies that support the Kremlin have reported that a Russian military plane has crashed near the Ukrainian border. The Belgorod region of Russia, which borders Ukraine, is reportedly the site of the accident of the Ilyushin Il-76 freight plane. According to local governor Vyacheslav Gladkov, an unnamed incident took place in the Korochansky area, which is northeast of Belgorod city, and he plans to investigate the matter. Ukraine has launched multiple attacks on Belgorod in the past few months, the most recent of which was a missile strike in December that killed 25 people. The chief of the British Army will issue a warning that the military is undersized, suggesting that Britons may be drafted to fight in a conflict with Russia. The Telegraph reports that General Sir Patrick Sanders will address the public on Wednesday, emphasizing the necessity of the government's readiness to mobilize the nation in the case of a conflict with Russia. This follows a warning from a high-ranking NATO military official that ordinary people should alter their lifestyles drastically in anticipation of a full-scale conflict with Russia over the next 2 decades.